most of the large money and funding coming through the normal, economic system. Were you ever worried with Luna, or do you think this could have been the case, especially for SBF, where he was dealing with a lot of, government officials? He was dealing with a lot of legitimate companies and brands, and is it possible that we're relying basically still on that money to grow the ecosystem in crypto? And perhaps maybe that's why CZ at the end of the day ended up winning, because maybe he has more actual decentralized money.
You mean he has more money, right? Like,
yeah,
he has more crypto?
I mean their balance. Yeah, no, their balance sheet. Yeah, crypto.
Well, I wouldn't characterize. Yeah, I wouldn't characterize what happened here as like CZ winning over SBF or anything like that. I think CZ just, did okay because he didn't do anything funny with his money, right? And I think it's, pretty much simple as that, right? If it was the opposite case where, like hypothetically, if like CZ was over leveraged and Sam, wasn't doing anything with his money, I think, quote unquote, Sam would have won. But I don't really think about this as like a conflict between CZ and Sam, and whatever people are speculating about Alameda attacking USD, I don't think it's like a conflict between Terra versus anyone else. I think it just goes down to
completely agree with
what is more resilient.
Yeah, and that goes to my next question. Do you believe that there should be some sort of this wouldn't be decentralized exactly, but in this time in our space, would you entertain the idea of having some sort of a, I guess, unofficial board to where these founders of the larger projects holding, most of the volume of customers and users to maybe, get together and be a little closer? Because from my experience, I've seen, most of you guys as founders are pretty hard to reach most of the time. And I also don't know if you guys have good relationships, speaking back to, obviously it's all speculation, but, with the CZ and SBF situation, for example, Vitalik hasn't really had much to say on the subject. And it's kind of concerning to see that most of the top players in the industry might not get along, or maybe not being as transparent with each other as well. So I'd like to hear your take on that.
Well, I think every relationship is different, but I would say that like crypto doesn't have a problem where it's like the founders of leading protocols and exchanges are not close to each other. I think it has the opposite problem where like they're too close to each other and there's information silos that form there. But just in general, like if you're asking whether like an official board of, like the largest exchanges or protocols should be formed for consumer safety, I think some forms of that already exists. Like, so for instance, I think there's like the Blockchain Association in the US for like regulatory lobbying purposes. I think like a lot of the Ethereum DeFi founders are quite close. But I think just in general, like, I think things like this is like forms an opportunity to form different types of standards in the industry, right? So for instance, I think it's pretty clear at this point that exchanges shouldn't custody their own funds, or at least there should be a better way of making sure that user deposits aren't touched. And, I think there's an argument to be made that there should be better ways of, preventing hacks or different types of monetary loss in the system. So it could be encapsulated in, let's say, a different token standard similar to the ERC-20. So, I mean, there's tons of lessons that we can take away from this. And a part of that could be regulation, right? So like as in centralized exchanges should be regulated similar to traditional brokerages. And I think that, especially these days, is a reasonable outcome, if not a better one.
Yeah, I agree. I think it has to start with, basically keeping the same practice that the whole world is used to. And yeah, no, I appreciate you coming on and answering most of our questions. I guess my last one would be, are you speaking with anyone in the regulatory system in terms of, perhaps being of help to fix it, of giving your, knowledge and kind of coding skills and everything that you've created? Have you had any talks of that sort with any, officials, or to become basically someone to prevent things that, happen to you and are seemingly happening all across the crypto industry?
Yes, but the conversations with regulators is, as you could probably tell, mixed.
Yeah.
For some of them, like they do reach out wanting to understand like what happened and like what are the types of guardrails that they should put into place, including doing nothing to make sure that users are kept safe. And in some cases, it's honestly, as you can imagine, a little antagonistic, but that is as it should be.
Yeah, Seal, I appreciate all the questions there. Those are all good. Appreciate that, and you hopping up here. To echo off of one of those, too, I mean, when we talk about, I guess, the emergency fund that CZ's been floating in crypto, I guess I've shared my opinions on that. But at least the Fed has kind of a dual mandate, right, when it comes to price stability, and a lot of people might say they've been failing on that recently, and full employment. I mean, when it comes to an emergency fund that might be used in crypto, and I guess what you tried to set up with Luna Foundation Guard,
Hey, I think we lost you.
and I think we lost it on the actual Coinage account, but I'll hop on here. All right, I think we fixed it. Yeah.
So, Kwon, you're still there?
Yeah, I'm here. I just missed a lot of what Zach said, though.
Yeah, I didn't hear the whole first part of that one, but I think he was asking about the Luna Foundation and your advances on that, and what, kind of asking on kind of like the CZ fund that he's kind of spoken about. So I think he meant to ask you about the Luna Foundation and if, kind of how you're structuring that.
Well, so the Luna Foundation Guard is, like it's done, right? So there's, but if you're talking about like the efficacy of CZ's emergency fund, I just don't know enough about it. It seems like like a good opportunity to provide liquidity to smaller projects or teams. But like at $1 billion, right? It's like $1 billion. I don't think it can prevent anything major from going down.
Yeah, sorry, I'm back on. The question was more so tied to the idea of actually establishing what a mandate for an emergency fund like the one CZ's talking about might be. Obviously, as the Fed is concerned, the dual mandate there being price stability and full employment, those are powers that are given to them by Congress in the way that it was set up. I'd be curious maybe what your warnings could be around the idea of a centralized emergency fund that is run by one of the largest crypto players, whether or not that could actually have, unintended consequences when it comes to an industry that's meant to be as decentralized as crypto, and maybe some of the warnings, perhaps what you've learned around LFG and the way that it functioned for Terra?
Well, the mandate is a little different, right? So I think, for CZ, like he runs a very large company within the crypto industry, right? And at the size of his balance sheet, $1 billion is probably not a lot of money. And if he can use that opportunity to invest in what he considers to be good projects, while at the same time, help them out of a difficult situation, I do think it's a net positive for the industry. I think LFG was a little bit different, like in the sense that, like, its main mandate was to buy Bitcoin to be able to create a reserve for like the Terra ecosystem. So like the unique concentration of risks and sort of like the challenge of LFG's mandate, I think, is a little bit different than what CZ is trying to do.
I think it's definitely harder, but I guess that's kind of, watching it from the outside, that would be the concern, is that if it's a broader mandate, at what point do you know what is, necessary to step in and backstop some of these things? Because then you open the can of worms that I think crypto is always trying to avoid, right? What is too big to fail, and what is not? And it's without that mandate or without kind of limiting those powers, I wonder if it's maybe, again, a potential to open unintended consequences in crypto.
That's a good question, Zach.
Or also, like even LFG, like issues you ran into in terms of like even trying to choose who's like, there is a process for putting into place a lot of these people. And if they're not elected, if they're just people I don't know if it's any better or worse, but just one thing.
Yeah, but although, like, I don't think like these particular mechanisms need to be like decentralized per se, because for CZ, like, he's using his own money, right? So he's not like, I hope he's not like using Binance user money, and I don't think he is, right? Like, he's using the money that he's earned through Binance to provide the backstop fund. So the idea that like that decision-making process needs to be decentralized, I don't think that's necessarily the case. I just think about it as like a private equity fund with like I guess like a somewhat altruistic secondary goal of trying to make sure that companies that have value don't go down. And it's kind of a similar situation for LFG. Like, most people don't realize this, but how we capitalized LFG in the first place is donations from TFL, which is an entity that I almost entirely own, right? So, and especially like with LFG, like the goal wasn't to act as the Fed for the Terra stablecoin. Like, it was like literally just intended to exist until we could like create a mechanism, an on-chain mechanism for there to be a BTC reserve against which you could redeem UST, right? But at the same time, I think it's when it's like proprietary capital, like, yeah, I don't know if you have a mandate to be a DAO or, appoint a decentralized set of governors.
I think, we're still trying to see what other questions people have. And I know you don't have unlimited amounts of time here, but one of the questions that continually gets brought up, and again, being a show that is trying to address community questions, I'm sure you've faced these from everybody, but the Luna Classic community is still very vocal. I'd be curious to get your take, I guess, on where that project stands now, since you've kind of shifted away. And as you've seen that kind of, again, try to, I guess, step in to fix a lot of the issues that exist on Terra Classic since you've departed.
So one of the things that's been surprising is there's been like extremely talented people step up and try to fill the void of what TFL left behind. And like, I don't really discuss this publicly, but I've had discussions with several of these builders that have reached out, and well, not only builders, but just like Luna Classic community members, right? So for some of them, they're just, very price sensitive. They would ask questions like, oh, when Lunsi to the moon or something like that. But I think for like the ones with whom I've had a continuous conversation, I've just been impressed by like the depth of their background and the amount of thoughts that they put into like, building a working economy on top of Luna Classic, which I think is not an outcome, honestly, that I was expecting, like when after coming out of the May crash. But I think the challenge that Luna Classic faces now is it's a very large and diverse community that hasn't had a time to, grow together, right? So sort of in that community that was formed in chaos, like the resulting discussions and the governance process and people's understanding of what this is supposed to be is also chaos. So you have talented factions with varying degrees of sophistication that are wanting different outcomes and different directions for the chain and the community. And I think that's the unique challenge that Terra Classic needs to solve now, is to come together under, if not a common direction, at least a common set of values that the community stands for. And if they're able to do that, then I think it's going to do well. If they are not able to do that, then I would say that things are going to be pretty challenging.
As you kind of, again, as we discussed, you're still active, I guess, in the Luna 2.0 movement and trying to build that out. We've discussed. I don't know why that is happening, but I think, Twitter Spaces have had issues when you cross the 3,000, I think, number on this, at least. Between two phones, we're trying to make this work. But no, Joe, I mean, when you're talking about, I guess, what happens now, right? We've seen kind of enthusiasm prices across the board for projects that may have been established a little bit longer than Luna 2.0. I mean, you mentioned before in our interview that it doesn't necessarily mean anything to be building in the bear. In fact, I think you mentioned it's better to be building in the bear. For launching a new project and getting off the ground, I mean, what kind of challenges have you seen in, I guess, again, trust issues aside, but just the engineering pieces of enthusiasm in the space waning with crash after crash, collapse after collapse, building that project out?
Well, so I can only speak to the teams that I've had an opportunity to work with closely, or like with respect to my team, but just in general, like people that like really enjoy the process of building, and yeah, they just don't really like trade or like pay attention to what's happening in the markets all that much anyway. And this is in some cases like a blessing and a curse, right? So like when there was a lot of attention, like people would just look at TFL and thought it was just like me and like a couple of different dudes, but no, like it was a large team and we had lots of people, right? And that's largely as a function of, lots of people in the team not like they don't want the publicity, they don't care about it, they don't actually like even trade all that much. So I think like for people that just like enjoy the process of building, and like as long as they're being paid enough so that they don't have to worry about food or rent, like just in general, like I don't think like whether it's a bull market or a bear market like really impacts their productivity very much. But like bear markets are great to focus, right? Because there are less people like pinging for your time. There's less conferences and podcasts and less attention in general. So I think it's easier to focus and get something done. But yeah, I don't think the crashes of centralized exchanges or like Terra blowing up would have had a material impact on people that are truly passionate about the space and their willingness to build.
I think we're getting close to the end on this Spaces, Dell, as we wrapped up pretty much everything here. I think there is, a lot of questions that are just, right now piling in, a lot to get to in the Spaces. And again, I know you only said you had an hour free, so I appreciate you sticking around to answer most of the other questions. Lastly, though, as we kind of talk about, again, to contrast everything that you've seen, what might be the last point that you would want to leave people with in terms of what we...
Okay, well, he dropped off again, but I think I got the gist. Well, so I said this earlier, like let's call this an AMA, but like a lot of people are hurting right now. The markets are absolutely terrible, and a lot of people have funds locked up in FTX. A lot of people, lost money. But I think the important thing to focus on is just, trying to focus on the facts, like getting down to the truth of the matter. So I think anger is justified and it's fine. And for people, for those of you that can best find closure through speculation, I think that's okay too. But at the end of the day, like, we don't learn and move forward as an industry unless we can truly just, look at the facts of what happened and then try to construct mechanisms and systems whereby we can do better so that stuff like this doesn't happen again. Right. So, and I think that means that, like, as tempting as it is to, demonize, let's say, SBF as like a drug-addled, sex orgy fueled type of scammer, like, which could be true. And like, but like the facts in situations like this take some time to play out. And based on those facts, I think we need to have a balanced discussion, not absolving SBF. Once again, I think probably what transpired with FTX and Alameda is absolutely terrible. But we need to construct ways and have a discussion and a dialogue on how we as an industry can prevent situations like this from happening again, right? And I don't think, like, people calling Sam like a meth abuser and then just, like crying for him to be put in jail is at least not the full solution.
All right. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to chat with us. Obviously, there's still a few people on the space. I want to remind everybody that Coinage is the community-owned show in crypto that is trying to answer the big questions here, and I appreciate everyone weighing in thus far on all the episode topics that we've chosen on the season. I want to give a shout-out to Seals for coming up here and asking questions as well. As we wrap the spaces up.
Yep. Thank you, Zach. I really appreciate you having me, and I appreciate you coming on to Kwon. I did have one last question for you. Do you think this is a matter of market capitulation, or are we in for a total reset and reconstruction period?
I think the market's going to be pretty bearish for some time. I don't know what it means for the market to capitulate. Like, if it's capitulation, I think it's going to look worse.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, just in general, like, I think if we're like trading crypto because the next few weeks or the next few months matter, then I don't think that's the right way to do it. Like if you need to worry about runway for like the next few months, you definitely shouldn't be trading crypto. Or like working in the industry, and like hopefully like you're getting paid enough so that you don't have to worry about food at least. And I think there's still like resources and teams that are still hiring. So I think from that perspective, like builders are going to be insulated. But yeah, I mean, I think we're in this for the long haul. So like,
yeah, I agree.
I think yeah.
All right, awesome, man. I really appreciate you coming on, and I'll I'll let Zach take it from here. Maybe his mic's not working. But yeah, no, I appreciate you coming on, Kwon. I appreciate you having us here with Coinage Media, the only co-owned NFT show. And yeah, hopefully you can get his mic working. If not, we know you're short on time. So really appreciate you coming on. And also I see wab.eth in the spaces, and love to talk to you about seals related things later on.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Signing off. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Kwon. Bye-bye.